want Detroit sports talk done right? Yeah! If you want it, you got it. It's Detroit sports talk with attitude. It's the Knee Jerks with Eno and Big Al.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like at this time to introduce to you one of the finest running backs in the United States of America, and our number one pick, Barry Sanders.
Here's Isaiah. Let's see what we got. All the way up. Go!
We might not be in your car or on your transistor radio, but we're bringing you the best of Detroit sports past, present, and future. It's time for the Knee Jerks with two guys who know Detroit sports. Here's Greg Eno and Al Beaton.
It's week 0 of the NCAA football season. I think it's like week 10,000 of the Knee Jerks, Detroit Sports Talk with Eno and Big Al. I'm the Big Al of the equation, Al Beaton, longtime Detroit-based podcaster and blogger. Joining me, as always, is the man who knows a lot of things about a lot of things. That would be Greg Eno of the Out of Bounds blog and other things online. Greg, how's things? What's up?
Hey, Al, thanks for that. It's been kind of crazy around here. I was on vacation for a couple of weeks. We lost power.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, remember, I forgot about that. That's why our time off kind of started, because you lost power.
Right. So we weren't able to record that week. So we're coming to you for the first time in about a month. And on top of that, we're going to go away right away again, because Al's going to be on vacation down in Florida. So we're probably not going to come back with you until mid to late September. So we'll just kind of call that our mid or late summer, early fall break before we hit the home stretch of the year.
Yes.
But that's okay. We'll have lots to talk about when we come back. I am Greg Eno from WordPress Out of Bounds blog. Thanks for checking that out. If you would, please, every Monday, you can follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. And special guest tonight is our good friend Bob Page. We bring Bob on specifically to kind of talk about the Al Avila thing, but of course we got into a lot of other things.
Yes, because he was right. He predicted what was going to go down. We thought, no, it's going to be the end of the season, but he insisted after trade deadline, and that's what happened.
And as you'll hear, Bob, but we wore Bob down with Tigers talk, and he almost begged us to talk about something else, which we did.
He did not almost. He did beg.
We did satisfy his urge to talk about something. We touched a little bit about the Red Wings. We touched on the Lions. We even touched on out non-Detroit teams like the Yankees, the Mets, and the Brooklyn Nets, believe it or not. So we touched on a lot of things in that discussion. John Watkin fuss, all sorts of stuff went on. We'll play that for you in a little bit. So that was fun. So we'll have Bob. We'll talk about on this show. We'll talk Lions. We'll talk about I don't know if we'll touch too much about the Tigers, because we talked too much about it with Bob.
Well, we'll have some of our own opinions on the Lions, but on the Tigers, of course. But we covered a bit of it with Bob. We'll get to that in a sec. But I guess, is there anything else you wanted to bring up before we start the birthday game?
No, there really isn't. So before we get to any of that stuff, any of that good stuff, we'll play a game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro?
We baked you a birthday cake. If you get it to me, and you moan and groan and woe, don't forget we told you so. Happy birthday! Happy birthday!
Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I give Al a clue or two or three of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports. And if Al can correctly guess that person within the first two clues, he'll win a free membership to the Columbia Record House Music Club.
I think I might have joined them 2 or 3 times back in the day, and I think I ended up reneging almost every time. I'd get my 12/8 tracks, and then that damn big old envelope would show up once a month. We're waiting for you to buy 2 more, and I don't think I ever would. And, oh my God, yeah. Oh God.
It's funny because that whole model, Al, of subscribing to things at low prices only to be ensnared.
Get 12
is really still going.
Get 12
it's
for
still
a penny
going.
or something like that. Yeah.
No, but I mean, when I'm saying that model.
Yeah.
It still exists today, just in a different form.
You're right.
Buy this and you'll automatically be subscribed. Let us know if you want to stop.
Yes.
That's been going on for years. Years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this person now made his name in the world of football. I will tell you that. He was born on this date in 1946. Sadly, passed away in 2015. Didn't even make it to his 69th birthday. I didn't know he died that young. I will tell you that he did play for our local team here in Detroit. And I will tell you that he was on offense.
Okay, offense. And what year did you say he passed away?
He died in 2015, born in 1946.
All right. So he would have played for the Lions 60s or 70s, played on offense. Oh, died in 2015. 1946. How about Nick Eddy?
No. Did I say that he was a Hall of Famer?
No, you did not.
If I did, okay. Well, that'll be part of the second clue.
Okay. Oh, okay.
By the way.
Yeah.
Which Nick Eddy was not.
No.
It's funny you say Nick Eddy because my dad's favorite player, this is no joke, was Nick Eddy. He loved Nick Eddy, and I think one of the reasons why he liked Nick Eddy was because Nick was always hurt, as you know.
Yep.
And he was always, my dad was always pulling for those kind of underdog guys, and he followed him in Notre Dame, and he was always pulling for Nick Eddy to be healthy and to get through a season. And I remember Alex Karras wrote in his book that when they cut Nick Eddy, the way that they did it was he didn't like the way that they cut him. They said that Nick came into the locker room in an exhibition game in Philadelphia, was looking for his locker, didn't see it.
Oh no!
And somebody said, go talk to coach and bring your playbook. And that was during the exhibition season. And Alex Karras absolutely went off on Joe Schmidt and Russ Thomas for how shitty that was to do to Nick Eddy. But anyway, so no, it's not Nick Eddy, but good guess. So we got lots to talk about. And, I guess we should just fly into the interview, right?
Yeah. Once you introduce, we'll warn you right now. Bob Page is in get off my lawn mode in this interview.
Right.
So.
This is classic Bob. Let's play that for you in a pre-recorded interview. We'll play that for you right now. Well, I would be remiss if I did not give credit where credit was due. Bob Page predicted boldly and several times, at least on social media he did, that the Tigers would fire GM Avila during the season. I did not buy that. I thought that they would do that. And behold, owner Chris Ilitch pulled the trigger on Avila about 2 weeks ago, and really kind of shocked me, frankly, that happened. And so I decided that we should bring Bob on here, not only to talk about that, but to get his impressions about maybe the future of the team and so forth. So he is here with us on the other end of our line. Bob Page, thank you so much, sir.
But this is like the first time I've been right and you've been wrong about that.
No, it's the first time I've admitted you're right and I'm wrong. That
may be true. Well, look, fellas. I mean, I can't take too much credit for this. AJ still seems to be the golden boy, right? He's not going anywhere unless, depending upon his contract situation, he might choose to go someplace else, and the Tigers might let him go. This is a disaster. Somebody has to pay, and since it's not going to be AJ and Ilitch isn't going to send the team, guess who's going to pay? The guy who made so many bonehead personnel decisions. I mean, they had to send, as I've been saying, they had to send a strong message to long-suffering Tiger fans who've had enough. They had to tell them, we're going to right what's wrong here, and we're going to begin right now by getting rid of nice guy Al Avila. He's a good baseball man. Everybody knows how hard he worked. But you got to be a judge of talent. You got to make smart moves, and that just wasn't Al's game, unfortunately.
Well, I think we can agree on that. I was just taken aback that the Tigers traditionally, for the most part, under the Ilitch ownership, have not really made these kinds of moves, even with the hockey club, during a season. These are the kinds of things that are done afterward. What gave you the impression, Bob? Because we can agree that somebody had to pay. We can agree.
Greg, that was then. This is now, and Mike isn't with us anymore. So, it's a whole different thing. And who knows how much sway Marion actually has in this process either. I really don't know if she has to sign off on these things. I mean, the inner workings of the Tigers and the Wings are somewhat a mystery with respect, at least, to the family. I guess less so with the Wings, because you would think that at this stage, Stevie is pretty much going to do what he wants to do, and then just go to Al and say, here's what I want to do, and Al's going to rubber stamp that. But, as I said, it just something had to happen. They had to send a strong message. I mean, pretty soon they're going to be out there. They're going to be begging for season ticket money for 2023. People are pissed. They're not happy with what's going on with the Tigers, and the Tigers have to tell, as I said, long-suffering fans, we're going to do something about it starting now.
In a recent episode of this program, I had spouted off some statistics about the Ilitch family ownership. This goes back to 92 when they bought the club. And basically, in a nutshell, 21 out of 30 seasons, they have finished with a below 500 record. Several times they finished below 400. Twice they finished below 300, if you can imagine. Okay. They've lost 1 million games. There really was only one kind of good era, if you will, 2006 to 2014, where they won some divisions. They got to a couple World Series.
In 2012, they got the World Series. Yeah, that's two World Series in the 21st century. I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world.
But people tend to romanticize Mike Ilitch in his death by saying, and at the same time while crapping on Chris Ilitch, by saying, well, Mike, Chris doesn't care about the team. He doesn't care about winning. Now, that could be debated. But let's not lose sight of the fact the first, 12 years of the Ilitch ownership was lousy with the Tigers. The last 8 have been lousy. This has not been a very well-run organization, to me, for the most part, in these 30 years.
No, it hasn't, but obviously what saved Mike's memory is, the great success the Wings have had. I mean, the Wings are a very big ticket in the Detroit market, as you guys well know. And since Mike bought the team, it's been really good, except obviously the last number of years.
One of my Twitter friends, and I know you've interacted with him before as well, Nick Milanovic, had a very good observation about Chris Ilitch. He said that, Chris Ilitch, unlike Mike, who, as you know, was an entrepreneur and basically was a self-made man, let's face it. He started with a little pizza shop in Garden City and grew that into what it is today. But Nick said, but Chris Ilitch is more of a bean counter, more of a money man, more of a money manager, and those types generally aren't risk takers. Whereas Mike Ilitch,
Greg, I got to be honest with you. I haven't lived in Detroit in 34 years. I haven't covered those teams in a long time. I'm sitting in New York City right now talking to you, where I have lived for 34 years. I've never met Chris Ilitch in my life. Right. I don't know the guy. I don't know anything about. I knew Mike well, very well. But I don't know Chris Ilitch at all. I have no idea what kind of man he is. I wish I could help you more, but he just seems to be kind of, I don't want to say secretive, but he plays things close to the vest. You don't hear too much. You would think, and of course you and I both always have been jumping on the feckless Detroit print media for quite some time. But you would think that somebody, maybe in the extreme example, maybe Mitch Albom would go, and if he hasn't, I haven't seen it, would go and just spend a whole bunch of time with Chris Ilitch and tell us who this guy actually is, if he can find out. How much power does he actually have? Or is it his mom? Or is it Stevie Eiserman who's calling all the shots with the Wings? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Did you see the press conference at all where Chris Ilitch announced the firing of Avila?
I certainly read the quotes. I didn't watch it, but I certainly read the quotes. Okay. Yeah.
You wouldn't have had to watch it necessarily, but of course the quote was the money quote from that press conference that everybody jumped on, and rightfully so, was when he essentially threw Avila under the bus. He said, "Look, I didn't trade those guys. I didn't do that. It was the GM who did that. You guys."
It's just hard for me to believe that when Avila, I'm sure he suggested those deals and set them up, but he had to go to Chris Ilitch and say, Chris, this is what we got a chance to do. This is what I'd like to do. So Chris either goes thumbs up or thumbs down. I have to believe that. But you're totally right with that terminology. Chris threw Avila under the bus, and I didn't like that.
Well, now here that which begs this question, which is, what does that say to any potential GMs out there who may consider the Tigers' job? Is that something that might dissuade them, or is that not a big deal?
That's a good question. I mean, if you look at this guy that you've been, for whatever reason, campaigning vociferously for, Carlos Rodriguez, the assistant in Tampa. I mean, a guy like that, if you're an assistant GM someplace, you want to be a major league GM. That's what you want. So you might be willing to, put up with a lot of stuff.
Sure.
You might be willing to, it just depends. We're already seeing reports that, one guy who would be on the tip of virtually everybody's tongue is Theo Epstein. Mm-hmm. And we're already seeing reports that he does not want the job. Now, is that because he might be afraid of interference? I mean, you just don't know what these guys are thinking, what they're saying behind closed doors. We can only surmise. And so many of these sports figures complain, this is all media speculation. This is not true. It's just media speculation. And why don't you come out and not just tell the media, because we're only the conduit for the paying customers, the fans. Why don't you come out and tell the fans through the media what you're thinking if you're afraid of media speculation?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We're talking with Bob Page on the Knee Jerks. I'm Greg Eno from my WordPress Out of Bounds blog, and Big Al Beaton is here, and we'll bring Big Al in right now. What you got for Bob Page?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Bob if I know there's been, over the last few months, there's been some articles out there, like in The Athletic and things like that were quoting other executives saying they didn't think Avila was creative enough or bold enough to make the moves.
Well, the guy traded one of the greatest pitchers of his time, if not all time, Justin Verlander, who was Mr. Detroit, for nothing. I mean, you can't say it wasn't bold enough. Al made a lot of moves, and a lot of those moves were stupid. Do
you think his very underwhelming trade deadline might have was? I don't know if that was just him not wanting to make it, didn't see any moves he liked, or if it was Ilitch saying, I've seen enough. I really don't know. But this last trade deadline on a team that desperately needed to unload something didn't do much of anything other than get rid of some free agents. Who
wants these guys? Yeah. Who wants? That's the big issue. Correct. Who wants these guys? So, right now, I just checked this before I went on with you guys. Mm-hmm. The Tigers have four players under the Mendoza line. Okay. Then they still list Robbie Grossman's stats on their webpage. Grossman was hitting 205. Barnhart is hitting 208. And Scope has been teetering above and below the Mendoza line all season. Right now, as we speak, he's hitting 202. And then, you look at the different pitchers they've had. I don't know if Casey Mize is going to make it or some of these guys. I mean, who's got real value? The Tigers have used 29 different pitchers this season, not including three position players they used in mop-up roles when they were getting the hell beat out of them. Mm-hmm. The whole thing is just totally absurd. It really is. And the Giants game on Wednesday afternoon was on national TV, the MLB Network. So I watch the Tigers whenever they're on. Mm-hmm. When I'm in Detroit, I've spent a lot of time in Detroit this summer. I watch pretty much every game. And some of these crowds you're looking at, Wednesday was a gorgeous day in Detroit, and the San Francisco Giants, how often do they come to town?
Right.
And it didn't look like anybody was there. So, what can we say?
Yeah.
And by the way, to be fair, it's all four Detroit pro sports teams, lest people think we're just picking on the Tigers.
No, well, yeah, but that's true. But they're the by far the most dysfunctional and by far the furthest away, I think, from
that obviously the Detroit Lions are the most dysfunctional franchise, period, anywhere. It's a joke.
Back to Grossman real quick. You mentioned Grossman. Right. Here's some more damning stuff that came out. He goes.
I know. I read it.
The Braves essentially fixed his. I know it's early. It's a small sample size. But they say that they essentially fixed this guy's swing on a plane trip, a plane ride, and all of a sudden he's for a little while there they figured it all out. It was mainly from the left side. He was having trouble from his left side, not so much from the right. And they said that they found something in video And then there are other people that said in baseball that said, this does not surprise me. The Tigers are not equipped to find these kinds of holes. And then
A.J. Hinch, and I've never seen this from a major league manager before, went ahead and he threw his own hitting coach under the bus, saying, well, believe me, we're going to make changes. Well, I mean, I would have resigned right then, or they should have fired the poor guy right then. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just.
No, but again, this is just another indictment of you mentioned all those guys around the Mendoza line, and a lot of those. They're not, and none of the names that you mentioned, by the way, are the second coming of Rod Carew, but they have done better things in the big leagues until they got to Detroit, and I don't get it. I just don't understand it. It's to me, Bob. This is we're looking at another 5 to 7 years fix here, because this to me.
Well, you say that. But who was talking? Oh, Tim Kirkson. I heard him on a radio talk show coming over to New York recently. And he was saying that the Baltimore Orioles didn't finish 36 games out last year in their division. They finished, and I think that's the number, they finished 36 games behind the team that was directly above them in their division standing. Think about that.
Yeah.
Now you look at what the Orioles have done this year, okay? So, I mean, it's not completely hopeless. I mean, the Tigers are going to have to do a bunch of stuff, and a whole bunch of guys are going to have to get healthy, and we'll see. But, I mean, 5 to 7 years, I just don't believe that. I can't believe that, especially if they do get a good general manager. No, it won't be another 5 to 7 years. They'll be contending sooner than later, I think.
Well, I don't know. I just think that there's so much broken with that organization that goes beyond just the 40-man roster. There's I don't see any influx of international talent. I don't see any player development. These kids, this Riley Green and Torkelson, I'm starting to wonder if they're going to miss on those kids. They're neither of them are impressing.
Who isn't thinking the same thing? And I said before, the first time, we read so much about Tork, and I was surprised the first time that I saw him actually in a Tigers uniform. I was expecting, Aaron Judge. I mean, a huge bopper because he hit all these home runs. I thought the guy would be 6'6" and 260 pounds of solid muscle. I thought, that's Tork? He's kind of small to be, a big power hitter. Yeah. And, with Riley Green, we don't know. He looks like he's a very good outfielder already, as we've seen. But it's one of those things where, he got off to a quick start, but then these are major league pitchers and pitching coaches. They're going to find holes. Now, can they mend the holes? Can Riley go on and become the player the Tigers hoped he would? I don't know. Can Tork? I don't know. I mean, who knows? I don't know. Yeah. It's such a tough thing. You look at the NFL, and you look at what Bill Belichick has done over the years, how he's run the Patriots. They trade all their draft choices, and then they go down in the 5th or 6th round, and they find guys who turn out to be really good competitors and really good players. And then 2 or 3 years later, they might get rid of them, and they find some more guys like that, or sign not big-name free agents, but they sign just, veteran free agents. It's all about the ability to judge talent. That's what it's about. Some guys are great at it. Some guys aren't.
We're talking with Bob Page here of the Knee Jerks. I'm Greg Eno from my WordPress Out of Bounds blog. And Big Al Beaton is here. And let's bring Big Al back in. What you got for Bob Page?
Since we're kind of covering all these Tigers' bases, what in the hell are they going to have to do with Miguel Cabrera? There's just no way they can run him out there next year. I know he's owed a significant amount of money. It's going to be like $40 million with the buyout. But they can't justify keeping him on the roster when he is slugging around the Mendoza line.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point, Al, but you have to remember this. This guy was the Tigers' leading hitter for most of the season. This guy was hitting right up around 300, though he has no pop anymore. And the reason he didn't have any pop anymore, I suspect, is the same reason why now he's slipped all the way down to 260. He's hurt. This guy's hurt. And he shouldn't be playing, actually. And he hasn't been playing, I don't think, that much lately. So, I mean, the deal is he's going to have a long time to convalesce in the off season. As you say, they got to pay him anyway. I mean, and I think he'd be a very positive influence on all the players, not just the Latino kids. And so they don't have any choice. I mean, they can't unload his contract. They're paying him anyway. Bring him back. Let's see if he's healthy. Let's see what he does.
Well, this was always going to be an issue. You could see this coming a mile away. In fact, you could probably see at the moment the ink dried on the contract that this was going to be an issue. It's time to pay the piper now. And Miggy, first he says he was going to retire potentially at the end of this year. Now then he did an about face real quick. And so no.
Well, we all understand Miggy's personal life, right? He was cheating on his wife for so many years. Mm-hmm. He had an alternate relationship his wife didn't know about with another woman with whom he fathered children. Okay, so this guy's been paying out literally millions of dollars. Whether it's in alimony or child support or whatever it is, I don't know. So he may be in a situation like Phil Mickelson is in right now. Speculation why Mickelson was a driving force, for leaving the PGA Tour is because he's a degenerate gambler and he needs money. So Miggy may need money too, and he's not going to just walk away from a guaranteed whatever it is, $35 million next year.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, no, that's true. I just wonder why he unless they just caught him in a down moment in kind of a period of morose where he said he was really kind of leaning toward not playing, but I don't know if the agent got to him and said,
that's what it was right there.
Hey, you're making $33 million next year if that's what it is. I'm your agent. I get 10% of that. I want my $3.3 million bucks. Right. You better play next year, buddy.
Now you mentioned, let's go back. You talked about Hinch being the golden boy and so forth. What about?
May I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
I think so many of us are sick and tired of talking about the Tigers. I'll keep talking about the Tigers if you want, but if you got something else you want to talk about, I'd be delighted.
Well, let me just ask you this one last one about the Tigers real quick,
and
that is Hinch. You mentioned him as being the golden boy. What are the odds of this guy sticking around?
Well, that depends on his contract, and there's been a lot of speculation about that. Does he have an out? Can he exercise an out? I mean, right now, he's going to wait and see, and don't believe that he won't have input into this, too. He's going to wait and see who the new GM is, first of all. Then he's going to wait and see what the new GM does and what the Tigers do. And I think, you can say a lot of things about A.J. Hinch. You can't say the guy's a loser. Let's put it that way. We all know what happened in Houston. We all know about the problems. But you can't say he's a loser. And if he walks away from this club right now, which looks like it's going to lose 100 games, people are going to say you're a quitter. You quit. You walked out on these guys. Yeah. So, maybe we wait and see, who comes back, all these pitchers who've been hurt, who comes back next year healthy. And, can Baez really be as awful as he's looked this year? It's just been amazing offensively and defensively. And it was like this weird reverse perfect storm where guys who've been good ball players. Jonathan Scope's been a good ball player. And they just all went in the tank this year, like right off the bat. It's been a very strange season.
Before we move on to I do want to get your impression on the Red Wings situation, because I don't think we really talked much about their offseason and the new coach and so forth. John Wackenfuss passed away the other day, and I know that that was right he played for the Tigers right when you were in the thick of your career in Detroit.
Oh yeah, I knew
Talk a little bit about him, if you would.
Well, Fuss was, to be honest with you, I never thought he was the brightest guy in the world. He was a very nice guy, but I never thought he was particularly friendly. Or had a lot of personality. We had guys in that clubhouse who were great. They had a lot of personality. They were fun to deal with. I can't say Fuss ever really was. He was Lynn Jones, who was a great guy and a guy I was pretty close to, who told me once that Fuss was like the biggest gadget freak in the world. Anything that came out, he had the newest thing. He had to get it. He was into fishing and hunting. And, he had such an effect on young baseball players growing up in Michigan and Southwest Ontario and Northwest Ohio, if you will, at the time. He had guys were copying his batting stance, and pretending they were John Wackenfuss. Yeah. And he wasn't exactly K-line at the plate, was he? No. He was decent. Right. But so, and it just, look, I'm at the point of my life now. I'm at the age of my life now where I start to think. I am thinking, am I going to die of Alzheimer's or dementia And, I don't think I am because of the tremendous, frankly, I'll tell you, physical shape I'm in and the fact that I do so many things to keep my mind active. But, gee, Wackenfuss suffered from dementia for the last 4 years. And he died almost a year to the day after Bill Freehand died, of Alzheimer's disease. And Bill suffered with that for a long time.
Right.
So, it just, John blamed it on too many collisions at the plate, as from reading. I don't know. I don't have any idea. But there are just way too many guys who died of Alzheimer's, and it's a scary thing. We are going to be able to, if not cure it, prevent it someday with modern medicine. We are going to do that. But a lot of us now who are older are thinking, we can be able to do that in time for me. It's scary.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's like any time I'm 59, for example, and Al's a little bit older than I am. And any time you just forgetting, and then we can make fun of it sometimes, but, short-term memory and just forgetting certain things. I start to think, gosh, is that just me forgetting something, or is that the sign of something else?
Well, you shouldn't worry about that. And believe me, I read a lot about this. The experts say, we all start to forget things, especially names, as we grow older or old as the case may be. But it's not that you can't remember what you came into the living room for. It's not that you can't find your car keys anywhere. It's when you get the car keys or someone hands them to you, you don't know what they're for.
No, that would be.
You don't know what they're for.
That would be a little terrifying.
So now that's what we're talking about when we're talking about dementia and Alzheimer's.
Red Wings, big off season, lots of free agent moves, new coach, new look, lots of national buzz about this club. In Stevie, we trust, has been kind of the thing. We had Kenny Cal on July 26th, and Kenny was, enthused, but of course you'd expect him to be.
Well, yeah, he's the team's. I mean, he's a paid employee of the team, which is why I've never liked to have play-by-play or color commentators on talk shows with me, because what are they supposed to say,
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Well, no, he's been candid with us. But anyways, your thoughts on the team.
Well, I don't know. It looks like they've shored up the goaltending situation. Grice had a couple of moments last year where he was okay, but I didn't like him, and I thought he was past his prime. And I didn't think they could go into this season with Grice as the number 2 or goalie or sharing time. I mean, they did sign a couple free agents. But my complaint about the Wings is the same, basically, and that is they need a couple of snipers. They need, every top team has got, a Steven Stamkos or somebody else, obviously the kid in Edmonton, for instance, or, a lot of these great young players who can score goals. You got to score goals. I thought the Wings were going to have that and Andreas Athanasiou, but he disappointed all of us. What a talent. And he's disappointed all of us. So I'm not down on the Wings at all. I certainly think that they're going to be better, but if anybody thinks they're going to be great or come close to winning the cup, they're just not ready yet. I don't think anyway.
We'll hit the home stretch here with Bob Page. He's our guest tonight on the Knee Jerks. I'm Greg Eno from my WordPress Out of Bounds blog. And let's bring Big Al back into the discussion. What you got for Bob Page?
Yeah, I had to laugh when you bring up the Detroit Lions dysfunction. Yet I wonder if you've been able to keep up with all the hype and notice the team is getting with their hard knocks.
Of course, and it's so stupid it's ridiculous. Of course I keep up with it. And it's like, every year these people never, ever learn. And it's mainly the young fans. You ask young Detroit Lions fans who Russ Thomas was, they have no idea. They'd never heard the name before, and they couldn't kill us. And a lot of these kids coming up now don't even remember when Matt Millen was the general manager of the team. As long as the Ford family owns this team, they will never win because they don't know what to do. They should have sold the team so many years ago, but instead what they did is they ran the Detroit Lions like their own personal fiefdom, which I suppose in a sense, I guess it is, but it really is a sacred trust for the people of the lower peninsula of Michigan, because Ubers are too smart for that stuff. They're Packers fans up there,
right? Right.
So the deal is, they got, it's the latest head coach they got. Oh, this guy's great. Oh, is he really? Joe Falls used to say the Lions' philosophy was, hey, let's give the guy a chance. And that's what I'm hearing, with this guy. And, the quarterback situation, they don't have a great quarterback situation there right now. We saw what Matthew Stafford did, once he got out of jail. It's just, I just don't, this is just a horribly dysfunctional franchise with so many fans who are far too loyal to them. The Fords need to sell the team. They're never going to sell that team. Mm-hmm. And every year, if they still used cash, long-suffering Lions suckers crawl back to the box office on their knees, clutching their rumpled 20s and 50s, and saying, "Please, sir, may I have some more? May I have some more, sir?" It's just
we make fun of this. No. We make fun of this, but this is really, to me, would be a fascinating psychological study. What do you think this is all about? What do you think that this fealty to the Lions by these folks who doesn't take much to get them going and get them excited? And you mentioned the age thing, and you're right. The folks who are maybe 40 years old and older are far more cynical, as they should be. But what is it about that, Bob? I really can't explain it. It's really fascinating.
It's their hometown team, and it's the only NFL franchise, if you want to call the Lions that. It's the only NFL franchise they have. So every year they're hoping against hope that something's going to change, that things are going to get better somehow, and they never do until they fire the latest head coach and bring in the latest head coach after that, making all the promises and so on and so forth. It's just, what I'm saying? I had enough of the Detroit Lions a long time ago. I don't read any articles about them anymore. I'm certainly not watching the HBO thing. I couldn't care less. And they can never, as long as the Fords own the franchise, they can never lose enough for me. And the reason for that is because our team was the greatest team in pro football throughout the 1950s. And when William Clay Ford, born with a silver spoon in his mouth, never worked a day in his life, when he got sole control of the Lions in 1963, he and Russ Thomas utterly ruined the franchise. But if that wasn't enough, they thumbed their noses at Lions fans, and they laughed at Lions fans, basically, what they did. And they stole our football team. And they laughed at us. And I can never forgive the Ford family for that. Of course, we had Mrs. Ford running the show for a long time. And now we got Sheila Ford. Two of the top football experts in America, so what a just that.
I don't know. I've always said the wrong Ford bought the team. If it had been Hank the Deuce, they always wondered how things would have been different.
I agree. Oh, yeah. I agree with that. Yeah. I think so. Yeah, we understand that Hank the Deuce was a brilliant man in his own right and a very successful.
Well, really, any one of those other folks, because wasn't at the time, weren't the Lions owned essentially by a whole bunch of people, and Bill Ford kind of bought them out?
Yeah. I think there was Edwin Anderson, and there were a couple other guys who had positions and stakes in the Lions, and Bill Ford bought them out. And I want to say this also. Russ Thomas was one of the biggest pricks I ever knew in sports. An evil, Machiavellian, lying, backstabbing man. But Bill was a nice guy. Yeah. He would come into when I covered the Lions, he'd be there in the interview room, at the back of the room. You'd say, "Hey, Mr. Ford, how are you? Hi, Bob. How's it going? Everything good?" He never seemed to take it personally, the fact that we were all ripping his football team, until after I had left for New York a long time ago. And then he started to take it. And the times I did see the Lions after I left Detroit, I felt so sorry for him because he's a nice guy, and you could see he was a recluse. He was just so unhappy and disappointed, and yes, embarrassed by what had happened. And you'd see him sitting, in the owner's box by himself. I never saw him smile, but it's just too bad what happened to him because he was not a bad guy.
It kind of reminds me, although, I don't know much about the personalities necessarily, but it kind of reminds me of Bruce Norris, who was, of course, as you know, a hard-drinking, kind of aloof, kind of an odd guy himself, kind of weird.
Absolutely. Yep.
And he lived down in Florida mostly, and I remember talking to Bill Gadsby many years ago about when Bill was fired. And Bill never, to the day he died, unfortunately, never really understood why he was fired. But Bill told me that when Bruce Norris fired him, he was sitting across the desk, and I had made a joke, something which I thought was just going to be a joke. I said something like, was he sober? And Bill very seriously said, well, he did have an amber-colored drink in front of him when he fired me. And he was dead serious. So, I don't know. Bruce Norris was an odd duck as well. He was just a weird one. But
I mean,
but he sold the team, though. But you got to give him credit because he sold the Red Wings. And like you said, the Fords will never sell the team. Never, ever.
Yeah, right. So it's been so unpleasant the last number of years. Mm-hmm. I have an alternate baseball team. Although I was on the Yankees broadcast for many years here in New York, mm-hmm. I'm really much more of a Mets fan. So I like the Mets. I watch a lot of Mets games, and mm-hmm. and then of course I love the New York Giants, always have, and I kind of like the Jets and the Dolphins because I live in South Florida half the year. So it's once you have other horses in the race, and your emotions aren't strictly tied up with these four pathetic teams that we've had in Detroit the last 6 years, it makes it a little easier to be a fan and to watch games.
What about the Mets real quick before I let you go? I've been kind of following them from afar. I keep waiting for them to go into a slump, but they don't. Are they for real? What are their chances? I know they got Scherzer at all. And what are their chances at DeGrom and so forth? What are their chances in the playoffs?
Well, as we record this, DeGrom's pitching tonight at home against Colorado, and it's highly unusual, if he doesn't have a great game. He's just an utterly amazing pitcher. And Max is, too, a little different type of pitcher, as we know, but Scherzer's been amazing for the most part, too. And, they've got some solid starters. I mean, Carrasco, who's on the injured list right now, is like 10-3 or 10-4. Tawan Walker, and they got another kid, a young guy that they've been using a lot lately too. So pitching's good. I mean, the lineup is good. There's a reason that the Mets have the second best record in the entire National League, next to the Dodgers, who, by the way, are going to be here in New York starting, I think, Monday night for 3 games. So that should be a very interesting series to watch. Could we have a Subway World Series this year? Hell yes, we could. Sure.
By the way, I'm glad you said that because what you're in New York right now. I know it's not a great sports town, but what are they saying about the Yankees right now? Because the Yankees are in a swoon right now.
Well, they really were having trouble for a while, but they still have the best record in the American League, and they just played a mini Subway Series.
They have a better record than the Astros?
Yeah, they do. And they just played a mini series, a 2-game series in the Bronx against the Mets, and they swept the Mets. They beat them 2 games. So, they've had the Yankees obviously have had some injuries too. And there's always a lot of consternation, when the Yankees are winning big, So, I got to believe the Yankees are going to put it together.
The Astros have a better record, Robert.
I just was on, look.
5 and the Yankees are like 70.
What's their winning? Let's look at their winning percentage. I thought
613. It's 613 for the Yankees and 640 for the Astros.
Oh, okay. My apologies.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, because I know they've been the Yankees have been in a. Well, I didn't realize that they swept the Mets in a 2-game series. I mean, you're right. They're still good. Don't get me wrong. But there are a lot of folks that are losing faith in Boone and so forth. So I wasn't sure what your thoughts were about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, guys get hurt, guys go into slumps, things happen. Does that make A.J. Hinch a bad manager? Does that make Booney a bad manager? It's baseball, it's sports, it just happens. So, I mean, I don't think Boone's going to be in any trouble unless the Yankees totally take a nosedive on this. Right. But, I think they'll be okay. It was an interesting comment that you just made in passing, and I think you probably made that because I've, hinted at that too. New York really is not a great sports town. Now that sounds really weird because we have nine major league professional teams here. Mm-hmm. But 50% surveys show 50% of the people who live in the 5 boroughs of New York City do not speak English at home as a first language. Mm-hmm. Then, because this is the arts capital of the world, with apologies to Hollywood, I guess, you have so many people who are into the arts, no interest in sports, whatsoever. Right. Huge gay population. And I've always said that, most top New York sports stars, not Derek Jeter, obviously, and people like that, most guys could walk the length of Manhattan. And I don't know how many people would really recognize him. In Detroit, the biggest stars in Detroit are local TV news anchors and the guys who play for the 4 Detroit professional sports teams. It's just a whole different thing. So I think the level of sports awareness in places like Detroit and Boston and so many other is just a little higher than it is here in New York. But I mean, New York, can't say New York's a bad sports town, but it's just, I don't think it's the same level. And I should know, as it is the interest in sports as it is elsewhere in some other markets.
Al, anything else for Bob before we let him go?
Have you felt anything that's going on with the drama with the Brooklyn Nets and the Kevin Durant wanted to trade and now he's not getting traded?
They make me puke. and you know, so many of these kids. My favorite sport is basketball. I was best at basketball as a player. I watch a lot of NBA games and I watch virtually every Michigan State and Michigan college game. I'm just so sick and tired of seeing how miserable these kids can be when they're making millions and millions of dollars and they're demanding this and they want to be traded and they want to be traded and some guy's making a little more. And I mean, then that Kyrie Irving's a jerk. This guy's a jerk. I mean, he's an amazing player. I don't know. I guess I can't really say that about Kevin Durant. I've heard that he's okay. He's an amazing player too. But the soap opera stuff that goes on with so many of these teams. I mean, and a guy, you know, or a woman with a family of 4, you know, making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, they want to take their kids to see an NBA game, and the tickets start at I don't have any idea what they start at $200 or $300 a piece or something like that. I mean, I just think that a lot of people who run professional sports are messing with the goose that laid the golden egg. They really are. It's just too expensive to go to games for so many people now, and players don't act as though they really appreciate the fantastic money that they make. And a lot of the players, I mean, some do, but you know what I'm saying? I don't know how big a fan I would be if I were much younger right now and a member of the ticket buying public. I don't know.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, thanks so much. As usual, lots of fun, lots of fun. And I know there are a lot of folks on Twitter that are anticipating seeing the link later tonight, Bob. So thanks for doing this and giving us your insights. And can't wait to finally see you again sometime one of these days.
Always great to talk to you guys. Thanks for having me.
Boy, he did not want to talk about the Tigers for the entire interview, did he? Anything, please. Anything other than the Tigers. So, yeah, let's talk about the dysfunctional Lions instead. Oh, my God.
Right.
But, yeah, I was kind of curious. I'm glad you brought up what was going on in New York because there's between the Yankees slumping and what was going on in the NBA in New York right now. I was curious what he was going to have to say about that. So. Yeah. But yeah, it's always fun talking to Bob, and he's since his late lamented podcast is no more, the one he was doing with Dan McLean and Eli Zared. I think it's nice. I think he kind of appreciates these coming on to our show and venting his spleen a little bit. Yeah. You know, get that opinion out there because that's about the only way you can get it out there anymore, other than that or Twitter. Yeah. So, right. All right. Well, Greg, with that, let's get to question 2 of the birthday game.
Okay, well, this person made his name in football. He was born in this state in 1946, passed away in 2015, played for our local team here in Detroit, a Hall of Famer, as I mentioned, on offense, and also played college ball at a Big Ten school.
Ah, all right. Hall of Famer, played on offense with the Lions. How many Hall of Famers played on offense with the Lions? Well, there was Charlie Sanders. I don't think he passed. I think he passed away more recently in 2015. Barry Sanders is still alive. Thank goodness. Oh my goodness.
Right.
Oh God.
Well, you're off. I got to tell you, you're.
I'm off by probably a generation.
No. You are wrong about somebody you just mentioned.
Okay. So it is Charlie Sanders then.
Yeah, it is Charlie Sanders. I didn't want you. Once you went down that path, I can't in good conscience watch you flail.
I could have swore he died a few years later than that, but I guess I was wrong about that.
Yeah.
Then again, the last few years are completely throwing everybody's clock off anyway. So
right. I didn't know that Charlie was that young.
Yeah.
He was 68.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other thing. I'm thinking someone a little bit older than Charlie Sanders would have been. Yeah.
Oh my God. I didn't know that. I mean, I knew he passed away, but I didn't know he was 68.
Well,
they said that he had they found a tumor in his knee when they were going to go do a knee replacement surgery, and unfortunately, that's what ended up killing him.
Well,
so,
I'm not surprised. I think it's pretty well known that playing pro football at the level these guys do, it's going to take years off their lives.
Sure.
So I guess that's something we need to remember when we talk about players dying young or dealing with Alzheimer's or other types of CTE and things like that. These guys are literally shortening their lives for our entertainment, and I guess that's something we do need to remember. Charlie Sanders had a wonderful career, both on the field and in the front office. I think he did some broadcasting as well. So,
oh yeah,
and it was almost all with the Lions. So that's it's the sort of thing you won't see much of anymore, I don't think. But I appreciate you throwing me a bone there with that. Let me get off the track.
Once you eliminated, I couldn't in good conscience sit there while you eliminated the answer.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think, how many Hall of Famers do the Lions have on offense anyway? Unless you go way back to to like the Doak Walker types or something like that. So,
right, exactly.
Yeah. All right, with that, and since Greg threw me a bone, I know we kind of touched on some of the. Anyway, I digress, I should say. I know we covered some of these topics while we were talking to Bob Page, but that was more Bob Page's opinion what was going on. We're going to give at least our kind of take. We won't go heavy, and because we did intersperse our takes with Bob, but we want to talk a little bit about what's going on with the Tigers because we haven't been able to talk about the Tigers for a month. And a couple days after our last podcast, Avila got fired. Got the ziggy, as we like to say, or is it? Wasn't that Joe Schmidt came up with that term? He got the ziggy.
Yes.
Right. Again, we're showing our age there. We're talking about getting the ziggy. And we remember Joe Schmidt. But after 22 years with the team, Greg, 7 years as GM, approximately 5 or 6 into a rebuild, Avila got the ziggy. Tigers spent big money this past offseason. They signed Javi Baez, Eduardo Rodriguez. Both have been big disappointments. Owner Chris Ilitch, as we touched on during the talking to Bob, had another farcical press conference. But he also, before the season started, declared that the rebuild was over. This time to start spending money, and they did, and it's all blown up. By the time April was over, Greg, the season was essentially over. That's how bad their start was, and it all went to hell after that between injuries and underperformance. So in the end, someone needed to pay. It wasn't going to be Hinch. It was going to be the general manager, the man behind everything. Essentially, the buck stopped with him. Even though Ilitch said he had nothing to do with anything, regardless, which I don't believe. But in the end, he was canned with the team 25 games under 500. His run ends with a record of 478 and 650. That's a 424 win percentage. Running the team for the remainder of the season was one of the Tigers' assistant GMs, Sam Menzin. He was actually brought in a year or two ago from the Dodgers, so he's not like a long-term guy of the Tigers. But what was interesting though, Greg, he wasn't called interim GM. I think he was referred to as the point man in the front office or something to that effect. But he's not interim, which was interesting.
Right.
And obviously AJ Hinch as well. But I think the two of them are going to be making majority of the personnel decisions from here on out, like who's going to come up in September, things like that. Yeah. And also worth noting, when asked about him being interested in the GM job, Hinch said he had no interest in moving to a front office position. So here we are, Greg, 7 years. I don't know how many podcasts later since Avila was fired. Hell, I remember now. It doesn't feel like 7 years has gone by since Dave Dombrowski got to Ziggy. Undeservedly, if you ask me. But here we are, and it feels in the end it feels like 7 years of just spinning their tires. It really does.
Yeah, for sure. I don't understand I should say don't understand. I don't really know where they're going to go from here because this is on the one hand, on the surface you say, oh gosh, Detroit, what a great sports town, what a great baseball city, what a great historic franchise. And maybe I'm just this is me getting more cynical as I get older, but I look at the Tigers and I know that only one team can win the World Series every year. I understand that. And I'm not trying to compare them to the Yankees. I know that's not fair.
Yeah.
But when you look at the franchise, but what I do compare them to, what I think it is fair to do, is to compare them to other mid-market franchises in baseball. Now, I consider the St. Louis Cardinals as that. Now, some folks will say, well, hey, whoa, time out. Cardinals are kind of like the Yankees of the National League, albeit they don't have that big budget that the Yankees have. Well, that's exactly my point.
Yeah.
The Cardinals have never been a team that has handed out, I mean, they'll keep pace with the times, of course, but they're not ones to make the Cardinals. They are always competitive. It doesn't matter what decade you're talking about. It doesn't matter who the manager is. It doesn't matter what kind of baseball landscape there is. It doesn't matter what style of baseball is being played out there. They somehow are able to field highly competitive teams year after year. And look at the Tigers.
Yeah.
And I just see Al, you and I are parallel in terms of following the team. Yeah. I see so many black holes in that organization where they've gone so many years with being irrelevant and non-contending and laughing stocks. And yeah, they'll have pockets of brilliance, of course. But for a franchise that's been around for 120 years in the American League, they've won 4 World Series. Now I know that again, I know that not everybody, a lot of teams you're not going to win. Only one team wins, but 4 World Series wins in 120 years is not exactly. They're not the Red Wings, okay, or the Canadians or the Yankees. They're far from that. So this is, to me, and there's been so many pockets of time where the player development has been so bad. I've been doing this series on Twitter called Random Tiger of the Day, and I've been highlighting different little-known Tigers throughout the different decades. And whenever I get to the early 70s, for example, you've got all these Gene Lamont and John Knox and John Gamble and all these no-name Marvin Lane and all these guys that just didn't amount to anything, and they had such poor player development in that era just before the '84 team got put together. Then they had another bad stretch during the Randy Smith era where they couldn't develop anyone, not even their top number 1 picks. Yep. And now we're back. Now we're seeing it again. Yeah. The same thing. You just can't develop anybody. And this has been going on for so long. It's sad to say, but I don't think that they are one of the better franchises a bit. Now they're one of the oldest, sure, of course. But so are the Phillies. Yeah. And the Phillies haven't won a whole lot either in their history. So, it doesn't, just because you're around a long time and you've been able to survive 120 years does not make you one of baseball's model franchises. Yeah. And this ownership of Mike Ilitch, not Mike Ilitch, but the Ilitch family has been pocked with way more bad than good, frankly. And this current thing, Al, with you mentioned last 6 years of whatever term you used to
spinning their wheels, essentially.
Yeah, it's really is just what happens when you spin your wheels. I mean, sooner or later somebody's got to pull you out, right? And I don't know what's going to take to pull this franchise out. And there's been so many damning things that have come out lately about that other than the national people are talking about. Non-Detroit people are talking about that are really indictments of. They're not really trying to throw shade. It's not like they're going out of their way to throw shade at the Tigers. They're just reporting stuff. These are facts. These aren't opinions. Yeah. And that's disconcerting to say the least. So I'm very cynical right now, and I don't see this being a quick fix. I don't care who you bring in here. I don't see it. I mean, if they bring in the sharpest tool in the shed, I know Bob disagrees with me, but I still think this is a 5 to 7 year turnaround. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. I just don't see it.
Yeah, so what's it, 34, or no, 35, 40, no, 34, 45, 68, and 84, if I remember it, for the 4 world titles this team has had. Yeah.
You got it.
And, yeah, you're right. It's a team of supposed stature, which has been in the American League for more than a century. They have just 4 world championships. Yeah, it's always been the Tigers talk a good game, but that's about it for the most part. And he said it's always pockets. There's never a run of sustained excellence. I mean, the closest we've ever had was that 10-year stretch from 2006 to 2016. And unfortunately, they never got a championship out of it. I think more out of bad luck than anything else. Injuries and because I tend not to be so, when it comes to not winning a World Series, at least in today's environment with the expanded playoffs and they have one game play-in games. Billy Bean once called the playoffs now a gauntlet of randomness. And in today's playoffs, you can go back to 87. Tigers were the best team in baseball that year, yet got run out of Minnesota. That was just an absolute, that's baseball. It's about getting to the playoffs. But regardless of all that, yes, the Tigers should have won more. They should have had more sustained runs of excellence. And when you were talking about some of the nobodies that came through in the early mid-'70s era, it kind of reminded me what we've seen over the past few years with the Tigers were talking up prospects. And they kept running them out there and running them. I mean, how many times are we going to see Daz Cameron? We already know what he is.
Right.
Why keep bringing him up? Why keep Jacoby Jones? Why was he here for 5 years?
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing I think that really ultimately soured me on the Tigers' current front office, was the fact that what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, and expecting a different result. Well, that's kind of how it's been with the Tigers and this group of prospects. They keep up and down, Derek Hill till they finally gave up on him after 7 years or something like that.
Right.
So up and down with these guys, and we're still seeing it like with a lot of these guys. So I don't know. I guess I really don't know where to go from here. I kind of fall on your end that, I think we talked about this a month ago. The rebuild's going to have to be rebuilt. I don't think it's a very quick fix unless something fluky happens. Like Riley Green develops into an MVP caliber player very, very, very quickly, and Spencer Torkelson remembers that he's supposed to hit 40 home runs a year. But that's the issue, is that this team has a long, long, long history of being unable to develop position players, at least at any significant level. I mean, you can pretty much mention on one hand, two maybe, since the 84 team was put together in the late 70s, early 80s, of the actual amount of star players this organization developed. I'm talking about position players, not pitching. I mean, Travis Fryman. And then, you could argue Bobby Higginson and who was the first baseman in Higginson's era?
Clark.
Tony Clark. They were good. They were legitimate big league players. But how many of these guys became impact players? Travis Fryman, Bobby Higginson, Clark, Curtis Granderson. You could probably make an argument for, but by the time he became an MVP level player, he was with the Yankees. But even though he did have some very good years with the Tigers, it seems like a lot of the Tigers' best young position players were brought here via trade. And like Austin Jackson, for example, or when they Dave Dombrowski was able to make some wonderful underrated trades, like when he picked up Carlos Guillen for next to nothing, Placido Blanco for next to nothing. I mean, guys who were just entering their primes and had some wonderful years here in Detroit. But even when he was here, this team had a hell of a time trying to develop position players. I think the last one I could really go with was Nick Castellanos, and by the time he was hitting his stride, the Tigers had to deal with him because they were going nowhere and he wanted out. He hated Comerica Park. So, I don't know, this organization just feels like an absolute mess right now. And then when you brought up the Robbie Grossman stuff, I think that's just more fuel for the fire. Where we had the Tigers talking up, we're building our analytics department up. I remember they called it Caesar even, and they were talking, we're building it from the ground up, and we're going to get caught up. Apparently, Greg, they are not caught up by what Grossman said. Where, as you brought up with Bob, where they essentially had video ready for him. They fixed it. Grossman got really hot right when he got to Atlanta. He's cooled off some, but they actually had video waiting for him when they traded for him, saying, this is what we see you doing wrong. And why couldn't the Tigers figure that out? Because, as it was brought up in an Athletic article, they can't. They just don't have the capabilities yet. So whoever this new GM is going to be, which I have no idea who it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be any big name like Theo Epstein or anything like that. It's going to be, like you said, someone from Tampa, someone from the Dodgers, someone from the Astros, someone, teams like that. But he's got his work cut out for him, because as much as we talk about the Lions being dysfunctional, the Tigers feel like a very dysfunctional franchise right now. They really, really do.
Well, why? It's embarrassing to even be talking about catching. You mentioned catching up on analytics.
Yeah.
And it's embarrassing.
And it's not just numbers. It's like using cameras and medicine and and psychology. This whole mixture of stuff to help your players be their best. It's not just about analyzing numbers. And that's the Tigers. Right. The Tigers might be able to analyze numbers, but whatever they're doing, it ain't working.
No, I'm glad you said that, because you're right. That is the case. And the other thing, it's not Alex. I mentioned in the interview with Bob.
Yeah.
I brought up Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson, and it's not that I think it was a bad idea in retrospect to draft these kids, because in all fairness, in fairness to the Tigers, when I was on board with drafting Torkelson number 1 overall, I was okay with Riley Green.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of, gosh, should they have drafted these guys?
It's like okay, what happened to them?
What do you do?
Yeah.
Right.
What do you
becomes,
do?
Okay, what do you do now? I mean, it's what anybody can call out their name on draft day and say, I pick Riley Green, I pick Spencer Torkelson. Okay, fine. But what happens after that? And now that these kids have, you could talk about maybe Torkelson was, brought up too soon and so forth. Whatever. But the bottom line is he just looked really overmatched.
Yep.
Which I know a lot of times kids can look overmatched in baseball, but he was missing fastballs down the middle and so forth. And if he became almost gun shy, he didn't want to swing the bat at times. He was too patient. So it's not a matter of, gosh, what a bust. They shouldn't have drafted Torkelson. No, it's not that. Mm-hmm. It's they don't know how to develop Torkelson. You get the feeling, Al, that if you were to, and this, I know this is cynicism 101. I understand that, but if you get the feeling that if you were to trade Torkelson right now to the Tampa Bay Rays, or to the Cardinals, or to the whatever, if you trade him tomorrow, then you'd be reading about him doing great things next year, and he'd be hitting home runs left and right. That's just the feeling the Tigers fans have now. It's like, of course he's going to go somewhere. Of course Grossman's going to go somewhere and be fixed. Of course, so it just becomes we've been conditioned to believe that it's almost like fait accompli, that when these kids come up, they're not going to be any good, and then if they do go somewhere else, they will be good. And that's just the way. Eugenio Suarez, for example. Now he cooled off a little bit, but when he went to Cincinnati, all of a sudden he was the second coming of Babe Ruth for a little while there. I don't understand.
The team's broken, specifically their player development, and I think that's been obvious for several years. And it's going to be it's going to take a long. Like I said, I think we're both in agreement there. I don't think it's going to be a quick fix unless something fluky happens that I don't see in the cards at the moment. Let's touch a little bit on Cabrera. We talked about a little bit of Bob, but the numbers are even worse than what Bob was bringing up, saying, well, he's down to hitting 260. Well, if you break the numbers down even further, I mean, they are scary bad. If you go back to June 1st, because around June 1st, his OPS was hovering in like the mid 700s, like 750 or so, and he was still hitting the ball pretty well. He was doing well with players in scoring position, things like that. He was
right.
He'd gotten the 500 home run mark. He'd gotten to the 3,000 hit mark. Since June 1st, Greg, Cabrera is hitting 241. He had 298 on base percentage and a 272 slugging percentage. That's a 570 OPS with just 4 extra base hits in 2.5 months. Even worse is since post All-Star break, he's hitting like Ray Euler. 143, 273, 214. That's a 487 OPS with 2 extra base hits. That's why I'm like, that's why I don't, he's under contract. You can't bring him back. The same thing will happen next year. He might look good for a month, and then his body's going to break down. That has pretty much been his MO for the past 5 or 6 years.
Sure.
And I see some fans get all sentimental and say, well, he deserves to retire as he sees fit because he's a legend, he's going to go in the Hall of Fame, so on and so forth. But he's not doing the team any kind of service, helping them by putting these kinds of god-awful, embarrassing numbers and then taking up a roster spot, because he's a DH at this point. Who was also suited to be a good DH? Kerry Carpenter, the guy that he just brought up, and has shown flashes that he might have something of a bat. So for all the talk that Cabrera is not blocking anybody, well, it's starting to look like there might be a few guys he's blocking. For that matter, they might be able to move Torkelson into a DH first base type thing, move some guys around, and with the lineup. I loved watching Cabrera for that 10-year stretch where he was one of the most dominant hitters in baseball. But right now, I understand why he's still playing, but he needs to listen to himself when he was talking a few weeks ago, when he was essentially saying, "I don't feel good. I'm going day by day. I don't think about next year right now. I need to talk to people. I'm trying to finish healthy, so on and so forth." The tone was, "I can't do this anymore. I am in pain. I don't feel good. I'm not having fun." Obviously, then the next day he said, I'm going to come back definitely next year. But the Tigers got to talk to him and say, because he's going to get the money either way. But they have to come up with some sort of plan. Either, he comes up with the team. They have, he has like one final homestand with them, and then he retires. Something, because this way it is right now, it's completely untenable. You can't keep running a guy out there who is so unhealthy that he can't even push off his legs anymore. And it's for all the talk that he could be a help to if he's supposedly going to be a help to the other guys on the team, he sure isn't being much help right now because no one's hitting on that goddamn team. Something needs to come. They need to have a come to Jesus meeting with Cabrera and figure something out, because this can't.
No. This is all reasonable stuff you're talking about. The only thing that saves that kind of makes it somewhat tenable is the team is so bad. The team is so bad, it doesn't really matter in a way, it doesn't matter what you do with him because the team is so bad. Okay, you mentioned he's not blocking anybody, but he may be blocking somebody. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. He doesn't. The team is so bad that it doesn't really matter how well Cabrera performs. And that sounds crazy. Now, I remember. Now, this is a whole different era I'm talking about. I remember Mike Schmidt retired early in the '89 season. I think it was in May. He was hitting right around 200 and was just not. He was like 40 years old. 39, 40 years old, and he held an impromptu press conference. I think they were out in San Diego or something. He said, "Look, excuse me, I can't. I'm not getting the job done. I'm not playing up to my standards. This is not what the fans deserve. I'm not helping the team." Now, the Phillies of '89 weren't very good either. Mm-hmm. He said, "Look, I'm not helping the team. Right. I can't. This is not my standard, and I'm quitting right then and there." He quit, and he was tearful, crying the whole 9 yards. Now, I understand that's 33 years ago. It's not the same kind of money. It's not the same kind of situation. And I'm not trying to compare Schmidt to Cabrera as people, because I don't see, frankly, Miguel Cabrera doing such a thing. I don't see, although he might. But I don't see him holding a press conference in June next year and saying, God, I can't do it. I can't do it. We talked about Victor Martinez, by the way. It's a very similar situation.
Yeah.
Victor Martinez was on the team. I even wrote a column about it. I said, why is he on the team? It was the same scenario. Of course, Victor wasn't on the team nearly as long as Cabrera.
Right, yeah, exactly. It was like only a couple years of that. Yeah.
It was the same thing. He was broken down. He was just a complete wreck. And he was on take up a rosters, but again, the team stunk. He was on the team the whole year. And it was sad though. But here's the other thing too. It's the sadness factor.
Yeah.
Now, Schmidt didn't want to be one of those guys that you look at and say, why doesn't he just quit already?
Yeah, it's the Willie Mays stumbling around in center field with the Mets.
Right.
When people bring up Willie Mays, that always seems to come up. Even though he was one of the best players of all time, the ending of his career was just so bad. People remember it, and that's a shame.
And it was in the World Series, which didn't help. So there's all eyes on him.
Yeah.
But the thing is that that's the thing. It's the sadness factor. I think the fans by now, most of them by now, should just pretty much just put away all their Cabrera hate.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to get any better. And now what we're going to be forced to watch, excuse me, unless something miraculous happens, is sadness. Just the shell of a one screen. Again, I said this in the interview with Bob. You could see this coming. You and I talked about this the moment that they signed that contract with him.
Yeah, it was going to end badly. Yeah,
right.
I was just hoping they would get like 2 or 3 years of good production. They just never had. His body just seemed to break down almost immediately after that contract.
And they did the same thing with Victor Martinez. They did the same thing with him. They gave him an extension when he was 1,000,000 years old. And
he had that 1 year where he was top 3 in the MVP voting. And then that was it. MVP? He was done. He was just done.
I know.
So
I know. It's just
because you bring up Mike Schmidt locally. That reminds me of was Bill Laimbeer.
Yeah.
Where he was like early in the season. He says, "I just can't do this anymore." He was 36 or so at the time.
Yeah.
And he just realized, as you said, Mike Schmidt, he was like, he says, I don't want to do what I need to do to play at this level anymore. I'm not playing at the level I think I should be able to anymore. And he just said, I'm done. And I think at least in that way, players get to decide for themselves when their career is over.
Right.
Right. It was too often we see, guys that we're seeing like Robinson Cano, for example. Bouncing around he's bounced around 3 different teams this year. The guy's had a wonderful borderline Hall of Fame career, probably the Hall of Very Good for sure, and yet he's still trying to hang on in his late 30s, even though his production is not much better than Cabrera's right now. And I wish I know it's hard for these guys. You would just wish sometimes they would just say, at least with Cabrera, the Cabrera especially, the Tigers are going to pay him. They are going to pay him, but it would be nice if these guys could just come to the realization that, I'm selling my legacy. I'm embarrassing myself. I'm embarrassing the team, and I'm clouding the memories of people who loved my career. And I think that would be the best case scenario. He comes back next year, plays for a month, and retires. That way people get to say their goodbyes, they can have a day for him, and then we can all move on with our lives and then become a coach or an ambassador or whatever, because he's going to want to stay in the game of baseball. So I'm sure the Tigers will create some sort of gig for him or a scout, in the Dominican, something to keep him in the game, because I have a feeling, though, Cabrera, one of the reasons he's hanging on is that he would probably be lost without the discipline it takes to be a Major League Baseball player. He seems like the kind of guy whose personal life he's already had a horrible personal life. He seems like the guy whose personal life could get horrible without the direction baseball gives him. Yeah, I think that's why. I personally think that might be why he's hanging around.
Yeah, everybody's different. I mean, I understand that everybody is different, and but you make a really good point about, and I'm glad to hear you say it, because not too many people. Mm-hmm. Of course, we're that much older, but not too many people. You mentioned about Mays, and you said, "Gosh, the first thing I think of almost when I think of Willie Mays is that horrible World Series, and it's a shame that we have to think that, because he was obviously one of the best players to ever play the game. Babe Ruth. A lot of folks who know know that he had a horrible ending in Boston, and it was
the Boston Braves, I believe, wasn't it?
Shell of his former self, and that was horrible. And your point about a Cabrera, and this is something that you and I are talking about right now, that it's only gonna ramp up. And I know that Lynn Henning has mentioned it. Excuse me too. So what are you going to do with Cabrera? And this is only going to get more talked about as
it's going to dominate discussion in the offseason.
Right. Yeah, sure, of course. And again, because the team's so bad, there's not much else to talk about other than being bad. So this is just another symptom of that. But your thing about, he's clouding his legacy and stuff like that. Try to fast forward. I mean, we all know he's going into the Hall of Fame first ballot. It's not about that. But when you fast forward his career 5 or 6 years from now, and what are we going to remember? Are we going to remember, and mainly Detroit? Nationally, they may be a little more forgiving because they don't follow the team as closely as we do here. But 5 or 6 years from now, when it gets time to go to the Hall of Fame, what are we going to be thinking? What are we going to remember about him in Detroit? Are we going to remember all the great, the Triple Crown and the MVPs and all that other stuff? Or are we going to remember instead, the last 5 or 6 years being, sucking the team dry financially and not really getting a lot of production? What will we remember about Miguel Cabrera? Now, I will say, you mentioned Mays, I will say that nobody thinks of Mike Schmidt as, boy, Mike Schmidt, that was a terrible. No, why? Because he cut his losses. He got out of the game. You don't really remember Mike Schmidt as being bad. You really don't. He was bad for like 1 month in '89, and that was enough for him to call it quits. Sandy Koufax, age 30, was quit at the top of his game. Now, obviously, that was physical, but he could have pitched if he wanted to. He just didn't want to. He said, I don't want to go through what I did by all the stuff I had to go through just to pitch with the treatments and the stuff he had to put in his arm and all the ice and the stuff that made his arm feel like it was on fire. I don't want to do that anymore. He was 30 years old and came off a great year for the Dodgers. He had he just didn't. He said, I want to get out of this game with my health intact. And but I don't see that in Cabrera. I don't see him doing that. It doesn't make him any less of a man. It doesn't make him. I'm not saying it's a indictment of his character necessarily, but I just don't see him doing that. I just don't see him having the self-awareness that I'm not helping. And maybe because he looks around and doesn't see anybody else. I mean, the team is so bad. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just like, well, hey, how much worse? How much better are we going to be if I'm not on the team? I may as well be on the team because I wish so bad anyway. I just don't see him doing that. I don't see him quitting ahead of time. I think he's going to ride this contract out, and it's all we're going to talk about next year. It's going to be his age 40 year. That's all we're going to talk about because there's going to be nothing else to talk about. Now, we'll have a new GM here, of course, and so there'll be something to talk about, I guess. But for the most part, he's going to suck the air out of all the publicity, Cabrera, next year, barring anything, barring something that you and I are seeing right now. He's going to dominate the discussion, and it's going to unfortunately it's going to be another. It's not going to be a good discussion. It's not going to be pleasant. It's going to be a lot of negativity. And he's going to get – I just wonder, Al, and maybe I'll write an article about – maybe I'll write a column about that. I just wonder what his legacy is going to be. It sounds silly to even ask that question because he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. But what will we really remember about him? And the fact that the team was so bad, his last 5 or 6 years, they were so bad that you can't help but put the two together. Like he's joined at the hip by these bad teams, and with very little production out of him, and you just can't separate the two. You can't separate how bad the team was from how bad he's been. Not that he's been the cause of they being bad, but those two are like joined at the hip. You can't separate them and say, well, he was bad and the team was bad. No, they're the same thing. People look at it the same way. They think of Cabrera 2017 on. as just a symptom of the Tigers from 2017 on.
Yeah, because actually I just brought up Cabrera's stats, at least looked at his value. He's been below league average player since 2016. 2016 was his last Cabrera-like year. And even for him, 2016 was slightly down. He was, in 2016 it was, 2016, 316, 393, 563, 38 home runs, 108 RBI. And then he's been a shadow of himself ever since. He's had a couple years where he was okay, decent OPS, hit mid-teens in the power, 60 RBI. But yeah, and then I brought up Mike Schmidt. His age 37 season, he was still a very, very, very productive player. He was getting MVP votes in his age 37 year. He had a 936 OPS. Then he had one average year of 742 OPS with the mid-teens home runs and 60 RBI. And then he said, I'm done after playing about a month. He played 42 games, and he was hitting 200, as you said. So that's the difference. Schmidt knew when it was what time to get up. But then again, you do make a good point when it comes to the money and things like that. There's other mitigating reasons why, but this was honestly the worst-case scenario for Miguel Cabrera, the Tigers. This was the worst-case scenario, and the worst-case scenario has happened. And here we are, and it's going to be very interesting to see what the team does with him next year, be it buy him out, ride with him, figure something. Who knows? I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about that in the offseason. Anyway, Greg, let's touch on John Wackenfuss real quick, then we'll end on the Lions. Wackenfuss passed away. He was only 73. As Bob mentioned, he had been fighting dementia for a couple years. I was interested in reading some of the obituaries about him. I wasn't really, I was a lot younger, and when this was all going down, I was in my 20s. I did not know that his contract status was so he was so. That's what had him upset and why he wanted out of Detroit. He thought he was being underpaid and underappreciated, and so which made him a part of that famous trade, which sent him and Glenn Wilson to Philadelphia for Dave Bergman and Willie Hernandez. The trade that essentially won the Tigers the 1984 World Series. But yeah, John Wackenfuss, or John B, or Johnny B, as Ernie Harwell would call him, he's just another in a long line of blue-collar bench players who were fairly productive, who were good at their jobs, who became beloved in this town. He's up there with you could say Don Kelly or Chris Draper. There's a whole slew of guys, or especially there's a lot of Red Wings that fit that. Just for whatever reason, this town just loves to adopt utility men. Gritty utility men. Right. But you got to give Wackenfuss credit. He became a fairly productive power hitter. He was no Don Kelly. He was much better. Probably not as good defensively as Don Kelly, but he was almost as versatile. Played catcher, which is very important, and he could hit for power. He had a great fit in Tiger Stadium with that. I think the best description I ever heard about his batting stance, which was extremely closed. I don't think I've ever seen a more closed batting stance. Plus, he did the thing with his fingers, waggling them on the butt. Is that he was trying to hit out of a phone booth. Is that you could fit in the phone booth with his batting stance. He's trying to hit in the phone booth. That's exactly how chunky he was. But I guess what all came in the end though. I did not know he was so upset with his contract status, and I remember seeing another article that came up with the bench players that he was linked with: Lynn Jones, Champ Summers, John Wackenfuss. There was a couple other guys that I don't remember that I saw in an article. God, that's a bunch of that guys. If you're a Tiger fan of that era, you remember all those guys, and it was. There was a lot of good memories of John Wackenfuss, and it would have been nice if he would have been able to be with that 84 team, but his loss was actually the Tigers' win, the gain, because that trade put them over the hump.
Yeah, absolutely, and I always wondered what the Phillies saw in him. Not that, everything you said.
Because he was in his mid-30s at that point too. He was not a young player. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, he's going to the National League where they don't have the DH, and he hadn't caught in many years at that point. He wasn't really a catcher anymore. He was more of a first baseman, outfielder, DH type. And I'm thinking, why would the Phillies want him? Was that? I mean, and then I often wonder if was like, would that deal was like Walkenfuss being part of the deal the thing that made the deal work? I don't understand why they want.
Yeah, because the centerpiece was Glenn Wilson. He was a young, productive outfielder. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Why they wanted Walkenfuss, I don't know.
If they needed a 2-for-2, and I know that they traded Bergman, so they needed a first baseman, I guess.
Yeah.
And but I don't know. But regardless, yeah, you're right. For whatever reason, Detroit fans have always, you're right, gravitated toward that type of. I guess it's just kind of a reflection of the blue collar.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Ism that Detroit is. But yeah, you're right. They love that kind of guy. And I wrote in my column, I said that one of the things I think that fans liked about him was that he looked like them. I mean, he looked like one of them. He looked,
which Bob kind of alluded to with his hunting and fishing kind of type of guy.
I said, I said in my column, I said you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference between Walkenfuss and a Tiger fantasy camper. I mean, they looked very similar. I mean, they were. I mean, but I mean, I think that they just, he had a lot of pop. He could hit the batting stance. Obviously, was part of it. Of course.
Oh yeah.
But he could hit the ball out of the ballpark, and I think it was one of the players that Sparky liked because he could put him in different places around the field, and he was never great at any serviceable. And he was just a dude. Dan Campbell would have called him a dude. He was one of those dudes, and Detroit fans just for whatever reason just like those kind of guys. They just tend to. Whether it's, and they also like the misfits, the Proberts and the McCartys and
exactly,
Denny McClain and guys the misfits they like as well, for whatever reason.
Yeah, because I just brought up the '81 team. I think that's one of the ones he was talking about, and there was Walkenfuss, Lynn Jones, Rick Leach, Champ Summers, Mick Kelleher, and Bill Fahey, and I remember all those guys.
Right.
But then again, though, I was just so into the Tigers at that point because they were growing into becoming that good team. But
not one of those guys, by the way. This speaks to what we were talking about earlier. Not one of those guys you mentioned was homegrown. Not one. Not one of them. None of them were homegrown. They were all acquired via trade or whatever. Not one of those guys was a homegrown player. And that's again another one of those things. The Tigers always relied on free agents and trades. And if the trade just didn't work out, or if they got rooked in a trade, that was it. They relied on getting the better of a deal, which they did sometimes.
Yeah.
Or they relied on signing – eventually they would rely on signing big free agents. And if sometimes that didn't work. Yeah. There was never an influx of talent coming in from the minor leagues, and all those guys you mentioned, with the exception of Leach, they did draft Leach.
Right.
Say that. Other than that, they were none of those guys. They were all either grabbed off the scrap heap from other teams, or signed as free agents, or picked up on waivers. None of them were homegrown.
Yeah, and I do have to admit, I loved me some Champ Summers. I loved he was my favorite player of that era. Yeah. I actually when it was still a thing, I actually sponsored his baseball reference page for a few years. That's how big of a fan I was of Champ Summers. Back when my blogging days. Because I just brought up Champ Summers' stats on going back in time here. Yeah. In his 2.5-3 seasons in Detroit, his OPS was 896. He hit 293, 388, 508. He was born to play in Tiger Stadium with that short overhang in right field. He was born to play there.
Look at his OPS in 79, 1.02.
Yeah, that's like Babe Ruthian. A 1.028. He slugged 614.
614.
He was born to play in Tiger Stadium, and I think that was one of the. I know him and Sparky Anderson just did not get along, and that's why he ended up going to San Diego. And he actually was in the '84 World Series.
Right.
That was his final year, but
Right. Right.
But listen to me. I'm doing the same thing we're just talking about. You fall in love with some bench players in this town.
Right.
And my bench player was Champ Summers. I'd love me some Champ Summers.
Yeah.
All right. Yes. Sure. All right. With that, let's wrap it up with. We touched a little bit. This is Bob with the Hard Knocks hype. I know you haven't watched the show so much, but you've been following it's all over social media. Clips and everything else. I have watched the 3 shows. I actually did subscribe to HBO Max so I could watch this. And every Tuesday at 10, I'm plopping my butt down on the couch to watch Hard Knocks. And it's interesting that the Lions seem to become, especially if you watch social media with people from other cities, fans from other cities, the Lions are suddenly going from the not even lovable losers, but embarrassing losers to America's team almost. People are rooting. Hard Knocks, say what you will about Hard Knocks or about the NFL, they are great at bringing out the best of people's personalities, at least on film. And Dan Campbell is coming out of Hard Knocks looking like the next coming of Newt Rockne and Vince Lombardi,
Right.
Right. He is just. Because I know because his speeches are always tend to turn up on, and his sayings, his speeches turn up on Twitter like I don't care if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes, we're gonna beat your ass, and all this kind of stuff, or the clip of him doing down ups, early on in training camp and things like that. There's been a lot of viral moments from this show, between the stuff with Campbell, Amon-Ra St. Brown being able to name each player in the school they played for, wide receivers that were drafted ahead of him in his draft. 16 players he could name. Obviously, there's the Aiden Hudson, Billie Jean performance. There was the trash talk between Aaron Glenn and Deuce Staley. Deuce Staley losing his voice on the field and screaming at his players while sounding like Mickey Mouse. It was hilarious. And I guess that's what we have to remember about this. We don't. The Lions are still. I don't think they're a good team. I think their ceiling is 500. Around 500 because they can't finish 500 in a 17-game season. So maybe 7 wins. Maybe that would be their ceiling. But we have to remember that this is not a documentary. Hard Knocks. It is an entertainment show. It's a reality series, and all realistically, this is a reality series, and reality series are somewhat scripted. And you can tell that by some of the players they focused on. Like in the last episode, episode 3, it was a lot about the bubble players, Pimpleton, Easy, a few other guys. And they didn't talk about Tom Kennedy, who had the huge playoff game. Not playoff game, well, yeah, I'll talk about that in a sec. But he had a huge game in Indianapolis where he caught 2 touchdown passes. And in the first exhibition game, he had over 100 yards receiving. But he wasn't even mentioned other than you saw the highlights during Hard Knocks, the game highlights.
Yeah.
But he wasn't part of, I think, the narrative they wanted to tell when it came to certain players. So that's what we have to remember. Because I see people online, Greg, complaining, well, we're not seeing Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator. We're not seeing Williams, the hurt wide receiver. We're not seeing anything about Okudah, blah, blah, blah. Well, they might be boring. They might not have much to say. They might not be entertaining. Or they may have reasons because of their injuries that they don't want to be focused on in this. And I think that's what people have to remember. This is not a documentary. It's a reality series, an entertaining reality series. But this is showing the Lions, for the most part, in the best light they've been shown in decades. And we just have to remember, this is not going to reflect how we see them in the regular season. I still don't think this is a playoff team. This is not a team that's going to go over 500. But, it's still entertaining as all hell. I got to give them that. It's been a very entertaining 3 episodes so far.
Well, one of the things that it kind of cracks me up. You're right. First of all, you're right about Hard Knocks is a very good brand, and it does wonders for a team's exposure. It does wonders for now. Of course, a lot of that goes away when the regular season begins because the regular season, of course, dominates everybody's consciousness. But when, in August, when there's not, the preseason is droning on and so forth. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it brings teams like the Lions, but Hard Knocks is a very specific and I didn't know this until they had brought it up when they were considering the Lions.
Yeah.
Hard Knocks has a very specific criteria as to which teams they're going to highlight. And they have to have all these different characteristics. Not a playoff team for the last X amount of years. There's all these different things.
Yeah, the coach has to be at least in place for a year. Can't have a new coach. You can't be in the playoffs. A whole bunch of different criteria. And there was only 3 teams eligible.
Because of that criteria, I think it was down to the Lions, the Jets, and maybe one other team.
I think it was Jacksonville. Yeah.
And so they chose the Lions.
No, it wasn't Jacksonville. It was Carolina. I think it was Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah, Carolina, the Lions, and the Jets.
Okay. Well.
And the Lions said, just pick us.
Now you're right. You're right about it being a reality show, and you're right about Campbell and all these other. But the thing is that fans. Well, maybe they do know this and they don't care, but the same stuff, Al, that you're seeing on Hard Knocks is going on, I guarantee.
In every camp, right?
Yes. All the 31 teams are joking around, having fun, having inspirational speeches in their rooms. All the other 31 training camps right now. It just so happens that we're only seeing the Lions. Now, you mentioned, is it scripted? Whatever. Doesn't matter. Bottom line is that the other 31 teams are having the same kind of bonding. It's just like spring training. Everybody's 0-0 on opening day, right? Same thing. Everybody is kumbaya. Enthusiasm is high. Everybody thinks that their coach is the greatest coach in the world. Everybody thinks their position room is the best position room in the league. Everybody thinks all that. Okay. Yeah. This is nothing unique to the Lions. Okay. It's just that we happen to be seeing it in national television. Okay. It's the cynic in me, but it's true. So I don't put a lot of stock. Now, what I do put some stock in, though, is that Hard Knocks is brainwashing national people into thinking the Lions have it shot, and they don't. Yeah. They're going to win. If they win 5 games, now last year I predicted 3 and they won 3. If they win 5 games with that defense, then they should put Dan Campbell in the Hall of Fame, because that is a ridiculous. Or Aaron Glenn, somebody's got to go in the Hall of Fame. If they win 5 games with that defense, with 0 playmakers, I don't want to hear about Hutchinson. They have no playmakers on the front 7 other than maybe Hutchinson. We don't even know yet. The linebacking core is usual. I don't know. For whatever reason, the Lions have not been able to put together a linebacking core in 30 years. I don't know why that is. They haven't been able to. And this is no exception. They have no playmakers in the linebacker. They brought back Jared Davis, for God's sakes. They're going gaga over this Malcolm Rodriguez kid.
Yeah, 6th round pick. A 6th round pick.
I don't know. I think he just looks good because everybody else is bad. Yeah. They don't have. Their secondary is thin as a wafer. I don't see that. I did not like what I saw in that when the starters played in the Falcons game, that first preseason game. I know it's the first drive of the game. I didn't like what I saw. I saw just, again, blown coverages, unable to tackle, no speed, easily blocked at the point of the line of scrimmage. Big gains on running plays, and if I tell you what, if they're going to be facing a mobile quarterback in week 1 with Philly. And I can tell you, after watching what they did against Indianapolis and against Atlanta, mobile quarterbacks will eat them alive. Mobile quarterbacks don't even have to throw the ball. Mobile quarterbacks can just go fade back and scramble and get 18 yards. They can't stop a mobile quarterback to save their life. Why? Because they have no speed and no playmakers. They have nobody on the edge. They have nobody in linebacker that you can even remotely game plan for. They're just a bunch of scrubs. And Aaron Glenn, for whatever reason, is the second coming of Buddy Ryan. I don't understand it. As far as being a defensive guru, I don't understand it. I really don't. Everybody thinks Aaron Glenn's the greatest thing since sliced bread. This defense is awful, and I don't know how you can win in the NFL, Al, with that kind of a defense. I really don't.
Oh, that's probably why they won't win this year. But one thing I will add about this is goddamn NFL Films is good at what they do. They are so good at what they do. They make because essentially the last 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes. Oh, am I muted? Yeah, here we go. Okay. And one thing I will add is watching Hard Knocks just shows just how good NFL films are at what they do.
Yes.
Oh my God, they are good. I mean, the last about 20 minutes of each episode or so, 25, because usually the episodes run about 55 minutes to 60 minutes. And about the last 20, 25 are game film, of the actual game. And they made like the Lions' victory over Indianapolis look like the goddamn Super Bowl. You can get so caught up in it. I knew how it ended. I watched the game. I know you did too. But watching NFL Films coverage of it, I mean, all that was missing was John Facenda, talking about the winds of autumn and things like that. With all that. And if you're of a certain age, you know who I'm talking about. Because John Facenda was the voice of NFL Films for a few decades. But goddamn, NFL Films is so good at what they do. And I guess the other thing I remember is someone who used to play ball, even up to the high school level, seeing the hijinks, in the locker room and in practice and the joking. That's the sort of stuff that anybody who's played, that's what you miss. I hated practicing per se. I love the games. I hated practicing, but the locker room stuff and the game stuff is why you played sports. And you suffered through practice just for all the other fun stuff you got to do. And Hard Knocks really, really brings that part of being on a team out, which is, again, that NFL Films is so good at what they do. They make the Lions look like a competent organization, and that says volumes. And, I hope that everything we're seeing actually pays off. I mean, we're dying for a winning team in this town, and we're dying for the Lions to actually be good for the first time in a couple generations. But as you said, there's still a lot of holes in this team, especially on defense. I think offense still probably be okay. Other than it depends on Jared Goff, how well he plays. But yeah, the defense is still a huge question mark, and we're seeing that even on Hard Knocks. We saw how those last two games went, the first two games of the exhibition season went, but. It's been entertaining to say the very least. At the very least, Greg, when I sit down for that hour to watch Hard Knocks, I find myself entertained. And I think that's what the NFL wants. They want to get people sucked into the NFL. Because we've talked about this before, Greg. We both know the NFL as an entity is horrible. Run by horrible people, horrible billionaires, horrible league. People, and we mentioned earlier, pro football players die young. Their careers are short, yet I managed to just to stuck that in the corner of my mind because I enjoy the game so much. And one of the reasons I enjoy the game so much, it gets brought out on shows like Hard Knocks, where it looks like, boy, playing football looks like so much goddamn fun. But obviously they're not going to show all the ugly stuff. Well, we might see the ugly stuff in the last episode in a couple weeks when they start cutting people. So that's when people are going to start crying. When Pimpleton gets cut or Easy gets cut. The guys you've been focusing on. So because they are going to get cut, they may end up on the practice squad, but they are going to get cut. Those two aren't going to make the team. But it's been so. I got to say this. Hard Knocks has done two things: make the Lions look competent, and just a reminder of how good NFL Films is at their job. And with that, I think we need to start wrapping up the show. So, who's your jerk of the week?
My jerk of the week is the NBA, and the reason why is as you know, we missed the show, of course, a couple weeks ago, so we didn't talk about Bill Russell passing away, and an iconic figure, not just in basketball circles, but in human circles, if you will. And the NBA, which on the surface sounds like a really cool thing to do, just has said that they are retiring Bill Russell's number throughout the league. In other words, nobody's going to wear number 6, just like the baseball people did with Jackie Robinson's 42. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to wear number 6 going forward. And that sounds great. But my question is, why did they wait till he died? I mean, Bill Russell's accomplishments were there. I've always been there. They were there. I mean, if you're going to do that, why wait till a guy dies before you do it? I mean, I guess what I'm saying is Bill Russell is not any greater in death than he was when he was living. So if this was on the mind of the NBA, or unless this is just, and unless it was just something that was cooked up after he died, and somebody in the PR department say, well, I got an idea. Why don't we retire his number? Well, that's no good either, because Bill Russell is if you're going to do it, then it should have been thought about before he passed away, because his accomplishments, again, not just in basketball, but when it comes to civil rights and all sorts of things, it just stands so tall, no pun intended, in basketball, that I don't know why his death now means we retire his number. Why not do it when he's alive to enjoy it? Maybe, announce it when so he can see it happen. And now we have him, and almost immediately after he died, it was like a day or two later, the NBA said, "Oh, you know what? We're going to retire his number."
Yeah.
What did he accomplish by dying that he didn't already accomplish in his life? So I may be a party pooper here, but I just think that it sounds like a great idea that the NBA is doing this, but the fact that they're doing it posthumously or how we pronounce that word, is just rubs me the wrong way. I almost wish they wouldn't do it at all. I would rather they have not done it than to say we're going to do it now that he's dead. Because they announced it like a day or two later. Now, if it was like 6 months went by, or a year, or 2 years, or whatever, and then, you know what? We thought about this, and we think Bill Russell deserves to have his number retired throughout the entire NBA. We said, okay, fine. But the body wasn't even cold yet, and they announced it. It was like, when did this come up? When did you think of this? Just now? Or were you thinking of doing it and just never got around to do it, and now he's dead, and now you're going to do it? I don't know. It just rubbed me the wrong way. I just think it's just, to me, again, I'm probably, maybe I'm in the minority here. I just think it's a slap at him as legacy to wait until he's passed away to give him this honor. Because if you're going to give him this honor, do it when he's alive, or don't do it at all. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it kind of feels like pandering a bit, you know. Yeah, it really does. And Bill Russell probably would, if he was alive, he'd call out what bullshit it was. Why are you doing it now?
Right.
Yeah. So I completely agree with what you're saying there. I was wondering where I was going to go with my jerk of the week. It's been a few weeks. There's a lot of candidates, but I ended up going with Fernando Tatis Jr.
Oh yes.
The offseason, he signed I believe a $340 million 10-year or something contract with the Padres. He had a monster year last year. He's a young guy. And then he couldn't play at all for the majority of the season because he was, I don't think it's ever been completely admitted, but it's accepted that he broke his wrist in a motorcycle accident during the offseason. He couldn't play for this year. And okay, so be it. That happens sometimes. But he was going to get ready he was about ready to play. And then the announcement came a couple weeks ago that MLB had suspended him 80 games for performance-enhancing drugs. And if I had to bring it up here, it was, what was it? I got the article here. What the hell it was called. Yeah, here it is. Clostebol, an anabolic steroid. Tatis originally said he accidentally took a medication to treat ringworm, which contained the substance. And after that was completely debunked by people who knew how to treat ringworm, he then said he had been dealing with a skin infection for some time. And he took a medication which had this on it and tested positive, which is, again, bullshit. He was taking PEDs, he just wouldn't admit it. And now he's announced he's going to have shoulder surgery, which he's already needed. And, so he's out till, I think, 20 games in the next year anyway. But this is apparent. For reading up on this, he is pissed off the Padres. He's pissed off his teammates. He's being called immature. He essentially is just shown he has not been able to take responsibility for his actions. He was lying about it for who knows how long. He still hasn't admitted to the motorcycle accident, I don't think. And then taking PEDs on top of it, and oh my, it's a huge mess for the Padres, who who've put a ton of faith in this kid by giving him that massive contract. And the first year of that contract has been an absolute cluster of monumental proportions, all due to Tatis himself. It's nothing the Padres has done. It's all on Tatis. So Fernando Tatis Jr. is my jerk of the week for being an immature jerk who cannot take responsibility for his actions. He finally apologized, I think, a couple days ago. Even that apology was half-assed. So anyway, and what makes it even worse, he's the son of a longtime big league player. You'd think he'd know better, but here we are. So my jerk of the week, Fernando Tatis Jr. With that, let's start wrapping things up. So, Greg, why don't you get out the thank yous and anything else that might be on your mind?
Sure. Thanks to Bob Page for being in Get Off My Lawn mode. It was very entertaining. We
I picture him like Clint Eastwood with the rifle on the sitting on the porch in the rocking chair.
Reminder that we will not be with you for
in 2 weeks. Yes.
We'll probably be with you mid to late September. We'll let you know on Twitter and other places, but that's okay. We'll be back, coming back strong as never. So just be aware that we won't be with you for a little while. You can read me in my WordPress Out of Bounds blog. I did a piece on Walkenfuss earlier this week. Hopefully you'll take a peek at that. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno and say hi to me there and debate sports there. And also follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. Thank you to my lovely wife Sharon for putting up with this nonsense all these many years, and for you, Big Al, for making, in this case, Thursday nights so gosh.
Yes, that's right. I keep forgetting. This is going to throw my internal body clock off because we're recording 2 days later. I'm going to finish this up and think it's Tuesday, and I'm going to get up in the morning thinking it's Wednesday. Thank you very much. But anyway, thank you, Greg, for taking time out. I know you have a busy schedule, even though you're coming off vacation to talk sports, and I appreciate you. Like I said, I'm going to be in Florida when we would normally record, so it'll be about a month from now when we're able to record again, give or take. So like I said, Greg and I will figure that out. But also, just give a shout out to all our listeners, and give a shout out to Linda, who's in the ER tonight, saving lives in the ER, and also give a shout out to Bean. I think I heard him once tonight, so just making his displeasure with the Tigers known. So, all right. If you want to listen to the podcast, if you want to find the podcast, obviously Greg told you we can find it on social media, on Twitter, also on Facebook. If you want to listen and subscribe to the show, we're on all the usual places: Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon Music, Deezer, Radio Public. TheKneeJerks.net is the homepage. You can go there for all the show notes, any links that we would be there, like the Greg's blog and things like that. Also, you can download the MP3 right from there if you're not the type to subscribe to a podcast service. As they always say, like, subscribe, comment. Spread the word if you like the show. Like I said, we're both on Facebook. The Knee Jerks on Facebook and on Twitter. Just give us your thoughts when you get a chance, and please subscribe to the show. And with that, let's get the hell out of here, because I could use a beer, and I think Greg could probably use a scotch. So until this time, probably mid-September, as we both got a lot on our plates. We'll talk soon, though. This is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha.
Ciao, everybody. We'll see you in about a month.